I love that quote that you gave from Steve Jobs. He and I must really have something in common. And his words that you quoted just flow right into the message that I'm bringing today. But first I want to play some music. I brought my violin Frances this morning. She's the violin that I use to make all my recordings with in the studio. I call her Frances because, well, as the Oneida grandmother said, who scolded me for not naming my violin, she said, you know, we name those things that are most sacred and precious to us, and we wrap them in red felt for protection. I asked her, well, how do you name a violin? She said, well, where was it made? I said, I looked inside and said, oh, it was made in France in 1927. And she says, well, is it male or female? I said, well, that's an easy question because I know it's a female violin. I know that because if I don't get her out of the case every day and play her, the next time I do, she's jealous. I have to coax her a little bit more to get that nice, sweet sound out of her. See, Frances has a red-tailed hawk feather. And this song is about the red-tailed hawk, a bird that has come to symbolize many things over the years, including healing and freedom and optimism and rebirth, even farsightedness and clear vision. It's been said that its keen eyesight can give us insight into our life's purpose, and its ability to soar on the currents of air is telling us that when we spread our wings and take our leap of faith, the universe will support us, just like the red-tailed hawk. Chase and attack a hawk, think of it as another lesson. The birds are telling us that when other people say mean or ugly things to us, that their words are not true unless we believe it. So don't give those people your attention. Fly higher like the hawk. done with the room? You've changed the room since I was here last time. Last time I was over here and everybody was bunched up, and now there's a lot more room, it seems like. Plus the fact that you brought in part of Mother Nature here. I love that. Because, you know, to Native American people, and I'm a Native American hybrid, because I'm part Southern Paiute on my mother's side, I'm a quarter blood, and on my father's side I'm part Scottish. So my music reflects both sides of my heritage. But the Native Americans believe that the language of God is spoken through nature, and that we can learn all we need to know from nature. I'd just like to thank Helen Hudgens for inviting me here this morning to share some thoughts and words of an inspiration about a subject that I call acting from the heart. I'm going to start by asking a question. What do we tend to do when we begin to feel lost or confused about various aspects of our life? I think we first instinctively search for a direction. And we feel sure that the answers that we're looking for are just around the corner that will help us know which way to turn, the right way to turn. While seeking advice and guidance from other people is sometimes helpful, I think there's a better way to do it, a better way for ourselves. Rather than asking someone else to give us their version of the truth for us, or what would they do in our shoes, I'm saying we can instead choose to look within and find the answers inside ourselves. Because each of us has been given an inner advisor that will never, ever steer us wrong. Now, I should know a thing or two about this, because I've been living this way since I was 19, and that's at least 40 years of experience. Now, my thesis for today can best be described, and I apologize for my allergies this morning. I didn't know it was going to be this bad. My eyes have been watering, my nose, you know. Some of you are suffering the same thing. But my thesis can best be summarized by quoting from an author that I just love. His name is Ken Carey, and among the books that he wrote is a book called Return of the Bird Tribes. It's no coincidence that my last name is Bird. And this is what he says. Without acquiring another life skill, without acquiring anything but complete and utter trust in the guidance system that we were born with, you have everything you need to interact optimally, creatively, and productively with every situation you can encounter. There is no exception. Do you understand the implications of what he's saying? He's saying, in other words, that you don't need any more education. You don't need any more diplomas or certificates or degrees. You don't need another seminar or workshop or a self-help book or retreat to go to. You don't need to buy another computer, a Palm Pilot, or an iPad. Because if civilization was to cease as we know it tomorrow, and you were left with only the clothes on your back and the inner guidance you were born with, you would not only survive, but have the ability to thrive and flourish. So I want to make my first point right now, and that is that we are born with a guidance system, but we aren't taught to follow it or trust it. Now, I wonder how many of you grew up like I did, in a family with confusion and mixed messages from the people that did the best they could. You know, I had an inner guidance system that was telling me one thing when the people around me were saying with their words and actions something else. Let's talk about the baby for a minute here. The newborn, up to the time when they begin to crawl and walk, this period of their life. They're thinking very simple thoughts. They're thinking what I want. I'm hungry. I want food. I'm tired. I want to sleep. I'm tired of laying down. I want somebody to hold me. I have a wet, poopy diaper. I want to get that thing off. And things like that. But then during our childhood, as the baby becomes a toddler, we are taught to suppress our natural way of being, and the question becomes the statement that we've been making before is "I want" becomes a question. Now we start saying things like, "Is it all right if I want this?" And we begin to doubt and fear and lose the connection to our inner guidance. We are not taught how to navigate the natural responses we are born with. Why is that? Well, it's because our parents and our school teachers and the clergy and ministers, society in general, have their own agendas. Basically, they want us to do what they want us to do, what they tell us to do, and follow them without question, sarcasm, or refusal. And they're very persuasive. They use fear, guilt, and force to make us comply. They're all very well-meaning, of course, because they're thinking it's for our own good and the good of society. And after all, how does a child really know what's best for them? But just take, for instance, think about nature. Think about the cardinal in that tree there. Now that baby cardinal inside the egg, it pecks its way out of that shell itself. Or is it the mother that goes and pecks it out? Or does the mother go and tap on it and say, "Hey, it's time to, peck yourself out"? The baby bird knows when to peck itself out of the shell, doesn't it? Are our offspring so different? Now, my parents lived their lives not knowing they had a personal guidance system. I can say that because as I observed them, I observed that they had no personal power. What does an individual feel if they don't have personal power? They feel fear. Now, the tyrant does not feel power. He feels frustration and impotency. And they wield force, but it's in a form of aggression, not authority. We have a perfect example of that in our world today. If you go to Syria and look at Assad, you see that he's a tyrant who has no power. He's got no hand. The people don't want him in power anymore. So what does he do? He wields aggression. He wields force on his own people. He's going down. He knows it. But he's not going quietly. So individuals who dominate others are, in fact, enslaved by their own insecurity. Well, my folks were very religious, church-going people, and they would remind me quite oftenly that I had my own free agency. But what does that really mean? I mean, when your only choice is to go to church and follow the rules, and eventually, when you die, you get your condo in the sky. That's my way of saying you get your rewards in heaven. But how free is free agency if that's your only choice, or, you're going to be damned to hell? Where does that thinking come from? That comes from fear-based thinking. Fear-based thinking. Another belief my parents had was the one about, if you spare the rod, you spoil the child. Where does that come from? That comes from the little tyrant. They were not parents, they were tyrants. They used force and fear of force to make us comply to their wishes. I'm sure I'm not the only one that grew up in a household like that. And why were they tyrants? Because they had no personal power. Personal power has become a very important subject for me. I wondered about it. I wondered, what was it? How do you get it? How do you use it? But the thing about spare the rod, spoil the child is that no matter how many beatings you take, they cannot beat your imagination out of you. And imagination is what saved me. As I grew older, I retained a glimmer of my inner guidance. And the imagination played a pivotal role in my life. I'm going to talk more about that in just a little bit, and I'll explain what I mean. But right now I have a question for you. And that's, how many of you have ever had a hunch, a gut feeling, a premonition, a very strong inclination, an intuition about something? We all have from time to time. But how many of us, first of all, what is that? That is the very wise and very unique voice of our own personal guidance system, trying to get our attention, trying to talk to us, trying to help us. But how many times we just write it off as unfounded or just completely ignore it? I had to make a very important decision when I was 19 years old. You see, I was raised, born in Idaho, but raised in Utah, Salt Lake and Provo, and back to Salt Lake again. And I lived there till I was 14, and then my parents moved down to Scottsdale, Arizona. My dad worked for a chain drugstore. And you could say that as a 14-year-old, I was a blind faith believer. But that's easy to become when you're only fed one diet of a religious doctrine. Until I was 14, I didn't know anybody that wasn't Mormon. And if you know anything about the Mormon religion, you know that when a young person reaches the age of 19, they're expected to serve a mission for the church. My older brother had gone on a mission. He'd gone to Germany. And now it was my turn. I was up at the plate. It was more like I was in the batter's box because I wasn't approaching the plate. I was hesitating. And my parents knew this, you know, and for them it was a big deal. Because if I went on a mission, it validated them. It proved that they had been good parents, that they had raised me in the Mormon way, and I was another cookie-cutter Mormon boy, you know. And so they arranged for the local bishopric to have me talk to one of the 12 apostles. You know, the only person higher than the 12 apostles in the Mormon church is the prophet. So this was a big deal, and I went to his office, and I sat there across from his big desk. He began to talk, and I listened, and as I listened to him, I kind of imagined that there was a shoebox on his desk. The lid of that shoebox says, Arvel Bird's life. He took that lid off, and he was putting in there all of his beliefs, all of his values, all of his morals, all of his decisions, all of his, you know, experiences, and all the books I should read, and everything I should do. And it was all going into this box, and then he put the lid back on, like symbolically shoved it towards me and said, now, if you follow all the rules that I've laid out for you in this box, I can guarantee you happiness. He was really selling it. You know, but what he didn't say spoke louder to me than what he did say. Now, I'm going to quote once again from Ken Carey's book, Return of the Bird Tribes. What he didn't say was, trust in God. The God that lives within you. Trust in your spirit's ability to respond to each situation beautifully, impeccably, individually, creatively. When you doubt your native ability to breathe the air of spirit into your world and create according to your divine thought, you are doubting both God and the universe. You are rejecting life's most precious gift to you, your own inner knowing. And you are presuming to replace it with values, judgments, and opinions that you have acquired secondhand. Just like Steve Jobs said. Secondhand. So there in that office, in that moment, listening to the apostle, I looked inside that shoebox, and I saw everything that I'd been taught by my parents, from their words to their examples, by my church, by my school, by society. And I realized that all of that was acquired secondhand. It wasn't mine. I didn't own it. The only thing in my life that I was truly sure of by my inner knowing was that I loved music and I wanted to play the violin. So guess what my choice was? How many of you are familiar with the author Henry Miller? Great author. I love what he said when he said, quote, "No man is great enough or wise enough for any of us to surrender our destiny to. The only way in which anyone can lead us is to restore to us our belief in our own guidance." Unquote. That just is beautiful. I love that. And you know, so I was a big disappointment to my parents. And it was like being disowned. From then on, I was on my own, financially, family-wise, spiritually. So there I go forth, stumbling forth into the adventure of my life, alone, with only one tool. I called it the tool of the altar of my heart. If I had a decision to make, or a choice, or an idea that might become a belief of mine, I would lay it on the altar of my heart and see how it felt. And if it gave me excitement, if it gave me feelings of well-being, and if it made my heart sing, brought me joy and, you know, anticipation, then I knew it was the right choice, the right decision, the right idea. But on the other hand, if it kind of made my chest heavy, if I couldn't take a deep breath when I thought about it, if I became anxious or nervous or apprehensive, or if my stomach churned when I thought about that, then I knew it was wrong. Don't go there. There's another author I love here. He's a best-selling author, Shakti Gawain. Says that, quote, "Every time you don't follow your inner guidance, you feel a loss of energy, a loss of power, and a sense of spiritual deadness." Unquote. Who wants that? This brings me to my second point. The second point I want to make is the intellect is good. Reason is a valuable tool. But the mind was created to serve, not eclipse, the human spirit. There's an English author, her name is Eileen Cady. She says, quote, "Cease to work everything out in your minds. It will get you nowhere. Live by intuition and inspiration, and let your whole life be a revelation." That sounds like an interesting life to live to me. So what is the definition of intuition? Instinctive knowing, without the use of the rational process. The term intuition is used to describe thoughts and preferences that come to mind quickly and without much reflection, like instinctually. There's a French mathematician whose name is Henri Poincaré. He says it is through science that we prove, but through intuition that we discover. And my favorite guy, Albert Einstein. You gotta love him. He wasn't just brilliant, he got it. He said, the only real valuable thing is intuition. When you strip everything away and you're standing there naked, the only thing you own is your intuition. He says, imagination is more powerful than knowledge and more important. Whoa. So where does imagination come from? It comes from your inner guidance. Remember that the rod of discipline I talked about before that couldn't beat the imagination out of me? The imagination saved me. If my parents had really known the power of music, they would never have gotten me a violin. Because I would have turned out as in that Mormon cookie cutter mold without the violin. But because the violin offered me a refuge, I could go away from the turmoil and upset and chaos of my family and go into my room and shut the door and be in quiet solitude with my violin. And in this kind of environment, you are able to receive your imagination, the messages from your inner guidance, because it's quiet, it's peaceful, and that's when you're in that situation you can best receive. And so music is to imagination as water is to the plant. And music just made my imagination run wild. And it led to me being in touch with my inner guidance system. Although I grew up in a household where I've experienced a lot of fear and abuse, the music and the imagination that it cultivated in me saved me. Because, you know, a person that's being abused has three options. Option number one, you can hide. You can shrink back. You can go within. You can, you know, cover yourself. I did that real well. I had a lot of trouble talking when I was a young person. I was shy, awkward, couldn't talk, couldn't look people in the eye, had no self-esteem. The other option is kind of the option my older brother took. You fight back. You become just as abusive as your abusers. But you know, that road leads to prison, or worse. And the third option is you find another way. I was just lucky. To have the violin. How many of you think that those beautiful models that walk down the runways of fashion are just beautiful airheads? Well, listen to what one supermodel, one French supermodel named Giselle Bunchain says. Now, she's married to the Patriots' Tom Brady. And she rose to the pinnacle of the fashion industry in both Paris and New York. Not by going to college, or schools, or taking courses, or watching videos, or reading books. She got there by intuition. And she says, the more you trust your intuition, the more empowered you become, the stronger you become, and the happier you become. So she equates happiness with personal power, which comes from trusting and following your intuition. And I believe that too. The thing about personal power is that you can't have your personal power. You can't be and walk in your personal power without being happy. But you can't be happy unless you're walking in your personal power. So it's like a catch-22, you know. You got to get on the wheel somewhere. So the bottom line is we got to find a way to be happy. That was my way to be happy. You've got your own way. You've got to find your own way to be happy. Happy is what makes your heart sing. When you do what makes your heart sing, then you are fulfilling your purpose in life. So this brings me to my third point, which is it's easy to tap into your inner guidance. But it comes down to whether you're willing to trust your inner guidance system. Well, I was on the website recently and surfing the web, and I found a website called Wings for the Heart, Positive Thoughts for Inspired Living. And here are 5 tips that I found there to help us connect with our inner guidance and to use it to create the best life ever. Number 1 is we have to create that harmonious forum, that harmonious place. Like me going into my room and shutting the door to be away from the chaos. Because your inner guidance can't talk to you when there's a lot of noise and chaos around you. So you have to be able to tap in and hear the wisdom waiting for you. And it comes to you in silence, in quietness, in a place of beauty, a place you can relax in. This is what we have to create, this place where we can relax. So you can surround yourself with beauty, like bringing in flowers or burning incense or candles or soothing music. Something to make you relax and become calm and in a peaceful mood. So that's the first thing we need to do. You find your sanctuary. You create a sanctuary for yourself. And then you turn within. If you're not a regular meditator, then this could be a tricky thing at first, because you're probably wondering, well, what the heck am I supposed to turn towards or focus on? But the answer is simple. Nothing. Focus on nothing. You simply close your eyes and turn your attention inward to the silence within you. Now, random thoughts are going to pop up and come around, but you just push them back gently and return to the silence. Turn your attention to the silence. I like to close my eyes and bring my attention up here to my forehead, into the area that would be known as the third eye area. I draw up there and I focus on my breathing in and out, calming myself. And then when you reach this position of calmness, then you can focus on or listen for the wisdom. That's number 3, is listen for the wisdom. So if you've got a particular situation that which you're kind of dealing with at the time, this would be a good time to think about it. And you might try to do so, well, you want to try to do so without judgment and without trying to come to any conclusion. You're just pondering the issue and practicing acceptance for what it is at this moment. And then you can ask yourself, or ask the question, what would be the best course of action for me at this time in my life, in my world? So you consider the possibilities before you think of how much, you think how each one makes you feel. You put it on the altar of your heart, and you will surely notice a difference. Some will feel right, some will feel wrong. Then the 4th tool is to let the solution materialize. Don't force anything. Let it materialize. And if you don't receive any insights right away, put the issue aside for a while. And because by going through this process, you've already set in motion, you've already tapped into your inner guidance, and you've asked for help. And even if the answer doesn't come immediately, it will come eventually. And in my experience, it will arrive soon. It usually arrives, it could be arrive in a flash of inspiration where you get an aha, or it could be more like along the lines of a subtle gut feeling where you just know that one course of action is the right action. Feels right. Then this brings us to the 5th tool, which is act from the heart. Once you know what you need to do, don't hesitate. Do it now. Don't let worries hold you back. Believe in your inner guidance, that it knows what's best for you, and move forward with courage. Maybe you don't have courage. You don't have courage until you cross the line. Then you have courage. Here's a real important point, though. When acting from the heart, remember that there are truly no right or wrong paths in life. Only experiences that we can learn from. By at least examining your options and considering the paths, which path is right for you, you are making a much wiser decision than you would have otherwise. So let's review. My thesis. Remember, without acquiring another life skill, without acquiring anything but complete and utter trust in your guidance system, that you were born with, you have everything you need to interact optimally, creatively, and productively with every situation. There is no exception. No God would create a creature without the wisdom to chart its own course. Every animal, bird, fish, insect, reptile, plant follows without question the nature of its design. Trust your instincts. Trust your intuition. It's an arrow whose shaft has been created straight and smooth. And it's unerring in its flight. And it always strikes the bullseye. Every time. So the 3 points that I made today are the point that we were born with a guidance system. Listen to it, trust it, and have the courage to act from the heart. The second one is that the mind of reason was created to assist, not direct the heart. And the third one is that it's easy to tap into your inner guidance system. You trust yourself and your natural response to every situation. The action arising from your heart is not going to be destructive. It is going to suggest the most creative path to walk in answer to your particular situation in your world. When you trust yourself, you are trusting in the wisdom that designed you. This is how you trust in God. It's not an abstract thing. Finally, I would like to refer to an Asian man whose name is George Huang. He's a top business consultant. And he said, whether or not you make what you think is a mistake, train yourself to recognize that whatever is going on is supposed to happen. That's an important part of trusting your inner guidance system. You cannot intellectually see clearly into the future, but your inner guidance system can. This doesn't mean that you'll always be consciously aware, but the awareness is there. If you learn to trust it, feel it, and listen to it, and above all, act upon it, you can navigate the waters of life from a position of personal power and happiness, rather than a reactive, fear-based life. Now, if there's one pearl to take home from today, it's this. Come to expect that things are going to work out in your favor no matter how bleak the situation. My wife and I, Kimberly, have a saying. We call it our magic mantra. Because when we say the magic mantra, magic things happen. The mantra is, that's okay, everything always works out for us. When we hit a speed bump in life, or things aren't going our way, or people are not responding to us the way we'd like, we say, that's okay, everything always works out for us. And it's proven time and time again. Last year was a huge year in terms of weather disasters in this country. And we got caught up in one of those weather disasters. April 27th, the tornado outbreak in Alabama. The Tuscaloosa? Tornado tore up Tuscaloosa. It didn't stop there. It just kept going northeast through Alabama. Well, that morning, Kim and I were in Ida, Alabama. And about noon, I left for Atlanta to get ready to play a festival there. Well, Kim stayed in Ida because 2 days before that, our motorhome, which is our rolling teepee, blew its engine. It's a diesel pusher. A 275 horsepower Cummins ISB engine. Blew its engine. We didn't even know it blown the engine. We climbed a hill and got down to Chattanooga from Nashville and saw the oil. Dang. Then we heard the knock. And the engines in the back were in the front. We didn't even know. It didn't even seem to lose power. But boy, there was a knock like you wouldn't believe. blew the engine. You know, that sets you back about 20,000. So Kim was there in Ida, Alabama, because it was close to Chattanooga, and she was going to check on the motorhome because things weren't, you know, settled yet. We didn't know what we were going to do. We haven't got $20,000. What the heck's going on here? And then that afternoon, a second tornado came through. The first one came through in the early morning and knocked out the power in Ida, Alabama. But our friends that we were staying with, Frank and Brendan, they had a generator, so we powered the generator. But pretty soon that ran out of fuel. All gas stations were down, no fuel. I was gone though. But they were kind of sitting there in the dark. There was no communication. Third tornado came through, a Tuscaloosa tornado. About 6:15 in the afternoon, early evening. And the only warning that they had was a text message or something that came in on a cell phone, a warning. Kim and Frank went to the front windows to see the tornado 100 yards away. They looked to the other side. They couldn't even see the other side of the tornado. It was so wide. Everybody ran into the bathroom, the inner bathroom. There was no cellar. 6 adults, 2 kids, and our 2 dogs. That tornado must have lifted the roof off the house and just collapsed all the walls back and buried everybody. But miraculously, no one was killed except one of our dogs. Kim was holding one of the dogs and was sucked out of her arms and landed who knows where. But it survived and made its way back to us, back to Kim in about 20 minutes. She was buried for about 20 minutes, and I was actually in Atlanta watching it on TV. But I didn't expect anything to happen. We didn't expect anything like that. And I got a phone call from Kim. She had just gotten out of the rubble and found her cell phone in the car that was charging up her cell phone in the car. And I've just been in a tornado. The house is gone. She said, I need you. I can't do this alone. So I got in the car, our Jeep, and started driving towards Ida, Alabama. I called our friends who live in Kennesaw, tell them what happened. And she said, well, I've just been texting with Kim and I hadn't gotten a text. The last text I got was about 20 minutes ago. And what did that text say, honey? Remember?
My text to her was fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. So I started up the freeway. And I narrowly missed a tornado myself. My friend Wendy, who I just called, had called me. They were watching it on the news and on the computer, and they said, Wendy said, well, where are you? I said, well, I'm just approaching the Cartersville exit. She said, get off now. There's a tornado crossing just north of the Cartersville exit. It was dark. I didn't know. So she saved my life. And I eventually made it to Chattanooga, to the Erlinger Hospital. They had changed the location of where they had taken the survivors 3 times. And it took me about 5 hours to go from Atlanta to Chattanooga. But I got there before Kim did, before the ambulance arrived. And we waited there in the emergency room for 15 hours before she could see a doctor. She was in so much pain that finally I gave up. I went back to the motorhome, which was parked in Chattanooga, and got the Percocet because she needed some relief. So then it was a period of recovery. And we did the Jeep and U-Haul tour after that. But her medical bills are $20,000 too. So now we got $20,000, $20,000, $40,000 of bills, and I had maybe $3,000 in the bank. Our publicist, I went to the house, the tornado site, the next day to retrieve our dog that had been killed, and took pictures and sent them to our publicist, and she put them out there, and within a day she said, "Hey, you've got people calling asking what they can do to help." And the kid said, "Oh, well, I just don't think we want to ask for anything." And she says, "Well, these people want to help, and you better let them." So within 3 months, we had raised $20,000 to get the motorhome fixed. And out of the goodness of people's hearts, some people I'd barely met, giving us $3,000 cash. We just don't know what effect we have on other people. And the medical bills were looming. But FEMA was supposed to cover it. We applied to FEMA. 3 times they turned us down. Third time, after the third time, Kim got on the phone with them and says, "What do we have to do to get this approved?" She told them the whole story. And they had been throwing out things like, "Well, you ran out of time, the paperwork wasn't complete, the hospital didn't do this, yeah, blah, blah, blah." And she says, "Well, this is why FEMA was created. Let me take this back and see what I can do." She says, "You might not hear from me for a couple of weeks." Well, 4 days later, she called back. She said, "I don't believe it. I've never seen something approved so fast." Medical bills paid. So, the magic mantra works. That's okay. Everything always works out for us. I want us to say that together, because I want you to take this magic mantra and I want you to use it. So repeat with me the words, "That's okay. Everything always works out for us." That's okay. Everything always works out for us. Good. Now let's say it louder. Ready? That's okay. Everything always works out for us. All right. Now I want you to say it so loud they can hear us down in Sedona. All right? Ready? Let's go. That's okay. Everything always works out for us. Okay. Now you got it. Now, no doubt it's going to take some energy. It takes conscious awareness to live this way. But you're going to put out the energy anyway, one way or the other. So why not choose the path of greatest good and highest good? Many blessings. Namaste. I'm going to... we never did our meditation. Let's do it now. Got to do it now. And then I've got a song that I want to play for you. It's called Distant Shore. And the reason I want to perform the song today is because I don't know how many of you are familiar with the words of Abraham Hicks, but I love what they say. And there was a gem. One time I heard her say, "We must make peace with where we are here and now while we keep our eye focused on that which we want." So the song Distant Shore is like that. We make peace with where we are here and now, but we keep our eye on the distant shore of where we want to land. So let's get in a comfortable position right now. Feet flat on the floor. We're going to do a grounding meditation so that we can feel focused, calm, and present.
with your hand. Now's the time to share our gifts and tithes. We thank you deeply for the ways you continually bless our community with your time, talents, and treasure. I invite you to hold your gift in your hands and call to mind your heart's desires. Please repeat this affirmation after me. I desire the highest and best in life.
I desire the highest and best in life.
I draw the highest and best to me.
I draw the highest and best to me.
I give joyfully.
I give joyfully.
And I receive with deep gratitude.
And I receive with great gratitude.
My ushers and I gather our gifts.
While we're doing that, I'm going to perform a piece of music from the Animal Totem CD called Tatonka, which is the buffalo. And it's appropriate because the buffalo represents abundance, because it gave the people everything. When you honor the buffalo, you honor it with thanksgiving. And as you give your gift of thanksgiving, we will do the dance of the buffalo. And if you listen to the music, you'll be able to hear the sound that an arrow makes when it leaves the bow and connects with the source of abundance.